Parshas Tsav is the second parsha in the book of Vayikra. Vayikra deals extensively with the rules, the laws of the Kohanim, the Korbanot especially. And last week's parsha began that subject, and this week's parsha is a continuation of the various Korbanos, of which the first one is introduced with the word Tsav. If you're with me in the Art Scroll Chumash, you can find it on page 568. And we are at the beginning of chapter 6 in Vayikra, in Leviticus. Vayidara Hashem Moshe lemor, Tsavis Aharon v'zbanav lemor, Zos Toras Ha'olah. The subject is introduced with the expression Tsav es Aharon v'zbanav. Now, there are a few nuances that require our attention. First, the word Tsav. It's not such a common word. Tsav is the command form of the word mitzvah, which means commandment. So tsav is a strong terminology. It is more than just a like an instruction or a provision or a presentation of laws. It is conveyed in the imperative, as I say, in the command form. Tsav es Aharon ves banav, Aaron and his sons. Now, the other passages don't begin that way. For example, if you look on the following page, Pasuk Zayin, V'zos Toras HaMincha, this is the law of the meal offering. The next paragraph, Ze Korban Aharon Uvanav, this is the offering of Aaron and his sons. Asher Kiru B'yom HaShachos. That is specific to Bnei Aaron because it's referring there to when they're first initiated into the role of the kahuna. But again, there it doesn't say tsav, it just says ze korban, this is the offering. If you turn the following page, daber el Aharon ve'el banav, to Aaron and his sons, and say zos toras hachatos, then zos toras ha'asham, then zos toras zevach shlamim. It usually says this is the law of, without the word tsav, and also most of the time it doesn't say Aaron ve'es banav, Aaron and his sons. So it is evident that there's something specific here which is particularly pertinent to Aaron and his sons and his descendants. Of course, collectively, all the Karbanos are the province of the Kohanim, but that only means that they are responsible for processing, for offering the Karbanos. The actual imperative, the obligation is incumbent either on the community, like the Korban Tamid, Karbanos Tzibur, or on the individual who has to bring a sin offering, or on the individual who chooses to bring a thanksgiving offering or a shlamim, a peace offering. In other words, the Kohanim have an important role, but nevertheless, we don't find that each time it says, tell Aaron his sons, but here it does. Moreover, Zos Toras Ha'olah, this is the law of the all burnt offering. Toras ha'olah, the word olah is usually translated as a scent offering or all burnt offering. Of course, both are true. It's called a scent because olah means to ascend. The reason it's known by that name is that the offering, the korban, ascends in smoke in its entirety. It is not consumed by the kohanim, which is unique because all the other offerings, the kohanim have a portion. Frequently, the one who brings it also has a portion. But here, no one has a portion in that it just goes up in smoke, except for the hide goes to Aaron or the Kohanim, but the actual, the animal itself is an all burnt offering. What is the significance of it? So the symbolism is that the all burnt offering, the ascent offering, is associated with a korban that is brought to atone for sinful intentions, sinful thoughts. A korban chatas, a sin offering, is brought for the committal of an aveira, an aveira that has no action associated with it. Is not subject to the korban chatas. But the korban ola is for an aveira which is in the mind or in the heart, if you like. In particular, the reference says the Tsav Sofer, according to Medrash, is to a korban that is thoughts which are associated with arrogance, with conceit. He says, quotes a posting in Yechezkel, Ha'oleh al ruchachem, that which occurs to you, that which arises in your mind, thoughts of self-importance, thoughts of conceit or arrogance, thoughts of self-aggrandizement. So says Tsav Sofer, the main message here, well, he's going to develop that shortly. The main message here has to do with the avera of arrogance, of conceit, and the temptation, or the not just the temptation, but let's say the inclination. And therefore, we have to wonder, why is that especially pertinent to Aaron and his sons? Why is it that this instruction, using the word tsav, which, as we said, is a kind of forceful terminology, why is it addressed to Aaron and his sons? Were they in some respect more prone to arrogance or more at risk for arrogance? Let's consider that. Moreover, he asks about Rashi's comments, opening comments. Take a look. Tsav es Aaron, if you have Rashi's comments. If not, I'll tell you. Ein tsav ela lashon ziruz. The word tsav connotes like urging or an instruction for alacrity, encouragement, ziruz miyad veladoros, something which a person might naturally be reluctant to do or lackadaisical about. Perhaps he's not naturally motivated to give it his attention in a timely fashion or in a determined or an enthusiastic manner. So lizarez is to encourage, is to urge. So Rashi says that the word tsav is used here, and it connotes ein tsav el lashon ziruz miyad v'ledoros, now and in the future. This is a famous comment of Rashi, but the commentaries ask, why does Rashi say miyad v'ledoros, now and in the future? So the simple understanding would be, Rashi is explaining why it says tsav, why it says es Aharon, the man Aharon, the brother of Moshe, ves banav, and his sons. The sons imply future generations, the next generation, and subsequently. Speak to Aharon means Aaron himself right now. So Rashi says that it's that tsav suggests something that requires attention, that like a kind of a need for encouragement or urging. Ziruz miyad v'ledor. Says Tsav Sofer, ma pito ma holech kan. The whole Torah is eternal. The whole Torah, in terms of the mitzvahs of the Torah, obviously there were some instructions which were for that immediate circumstance, but the mitzvahs of the Torah and the Torah collectively, the Torah as a whole, is of eternal importance. It was relevant at the time of giving. It was relevant in biblical times. It was relevant in Mishnaic times, etc., and it's relevant to us today as well. Why does Rashi say that this mitzvah, or how can Rashi explain, what does Rashi mean when he says that this is a mitzvah with which the Torah says the word tsav, indicating that it requires additional emphasis or awareness or alertness now and in the future as well? What is special about it? So Tsav Sofer takes up this subject, and that is going to be a subject of our discussion, our analysis tonight. This subject, namely the connotation of the Korban Olah, which he argues is associated especially with conceit or self-importance, the feeling of aggrandizement, and why it was necessary for Aaron in particular. So he starts off by quoting Chovos HaLevavos. I don't think I've mentioned to you in the past, even those who've been with us over the months that we've been studying Tsav Sofer together. Tsav Sofer, as you know, was the son of Chassam Sofer. He was the eldest son. He was the successor of the Chassam Sofer. His mother was the daughter of Rabbi Akiva Eger. Rabbi Akiva Eger was a contemporary of Chassam Sofer. He was actually only a couple of years older than Chassam Sofer, but nevertheless, his daughter married Chassam Sofer as a second wife, his first wife. The first wife, Chassam Sofer, predeceased him. And my point is that Tsav Sofer was very close to his father. His father was 52 years old when he was born. And Tsav Sofer naturally learned so much from his father. My point about mentioning Rabbi Akiva Eger is that he was the grandson of the great Rabbi Akiva Eger. So he was a person of great erudition, great talent, and he quotes Chovos Halvavos quite a lot. Chassam Sofer was very fond of Chovos Halvavos. He would teach Chovos Halvavos every day in the yeshiva, Chassam Sofer, and therefore it's not surprising that Tsav Sofer, our friend for the year, draws on the teachings and the fundamentals that are included, that are contained within that book, Chovos Halvavos, quite often. Chovos Halvavos means duties of the heart. It was written by Rabbeinu Bachya ibn Pakuda, who lived in 11th century Spain. We actually don't know that much about him, but we know that he lived in Spain. He wrote his book in Arabic, which was translated into Hebrew. Now it's been translated into a more accessible, more maybe more modern Hebrew. Says the Chovos Halvavos, there are two types of geut, two types of arrogance. There is of a physical nature, of a terrestrial nature. A person is proud and is conceited because he is very charming, or he's very good looking, or he's very charismatic, or he's wealthy, or he's powerful, he's prestigious, and therefore all of those factors can easily go to his head. That's one type. A person has pride because of those physical terrestrial features or aspects of who he is. But there's also another type of geus, another type of arrogance, which is also far from unknown, and that is a person who is conceited because of his spiritual achievements. Maybe because he's very learned in Torah, or he has Yiras Shamayim, he's very devout, or he's a holy person, he's very stringent with himself, and he prays at length, and he's very holy. Now, I'm not being sarcastic when I say that a person can be have full of self-regard because of that. It's not a contradiction at all. On the contrary, if a person values Torah and he knows that he is knowledgeable in Torah, more so than others, maybe people seek his advice or his halachic rulings, and it's very easy, and as I say, not at all unknown for a person, including a rabbi, to become full of himself in that regard. The Kotzker Rebbe once said that I prefer a Rasha who knows he's a Rasha than a tzaddik who knows he's a tzaddik. That's a very sharp comment. That a person who is wicked, who knows that he's wicked, at least there's a possibility of improvement because he realizes that he's a scoundrel. That recognition is the ray of hope for improvement. But the one who is righteous, who is very well aware of his righteousness, he sets himself up for fall. That's what the Kotzker Rebbe said. So this is what Chovos Halvavos says, that these are two types of arrogance. There's arrogance regarding aspects of a person's character, which perhaps in spiritual sense are neutral. They may be useful in many ways, and it can easily go to a person's head, as we mentioned. But even in the spiritual realm, there is the pitfall of arrogance, of ga'ava. Says the Tsav Sofer, this is how we can understand the well-known statement in the Mishnah, Ma'od ma'od havei shval ruach. I think it's chapter 4, Mishnah 4. Ma'od ma'od havei shval ruach. It says in Pirkei Avos, be exceedingly humble, ma'od ma'od, or greatly and exceedingly, or exceedingly, however you want to say it. The word ma'od is repeated. So Tsav Sofer says that alludes to the two areas. A person has to be humble and has to avoid conceit or aggrandizement or excessive pride in both of those areas. And he says this is why Moshe was anav mikol adam. The greatest of Moshe found its expression in his humility. Even though Tsav Sofer explains that Moshe Rabbeinu actually had very good reason to be proud of his accomplishments in both realms. According to a rabbinic tradition, he was very wealthy. He was certainly powerful, and that he was the king, the leader, the redeemer. I mean, he trounced Paro. He certainly was the leader of the Jewish people, the one who took them out of Mitzrayim, performed miracles for them. He had great strength as well. Again, according to the Medrash, he led the battle against Og Melech HaBashan. So Moshe Rabbeinu, even though we don't think of him as a warrior, but the Torah records his, and it's elaborated upon in the rabbinic tradition, his prowess as a warrior as well. He had power, prestige, and everything, and wealth also. But of course, even more so, much more so, he was Av HaNeviim, the father of all the prophets, the greatest prophet of all time. He conversed with God face to face. I don't need to describe or to remind you of how Moshe was at the very highest pinnacle of spiritual attainment, more so than any person ever. And for that reason, it is so notable that Moshe was Anav Mikol Adam. So Tsav Sofer says the greatness of Moshe lay in his humility, despite the fact of his many, many great, let's say, accomplishments, or the ways in which a person naturally could, and under normal circumstance, that is to say, a person who has normal human foibles would become very arrogant because of all of those reasons. Moshe was not that, he was the opposite. So he analyzes it, and this I think is quite, when I say interesting, is quite relevant, for all of us to contemplate. He says when it comes to arrogance of gashmias, of material, endowments, whether it's money or prestige or charisma or celebrity. He says, if you think about it a little bit, we will all agree they are, he doesn't use the word because he wrote in Hebrew, but ephemeral. They're all passing. They could even say they are evanescent. They come and go. Think about political leaders, even in recent years. Tony Blair came to, became prime minister with the enormous majority, and the Labour Party was riding high, New Labour, and he was so popular. I mean, now Tony Blair is one of the most reviled people in the whole country. I'm not saying that I'm among those who revile him. There's certainly a lot of people, though, who do. And Tony Blair has gone from the heights to the depths. And what about Liz Truss? Prime minister for, how was it, 3 weeks or something? She was prime minister, and it was a lot of fanfare, inevitably, and all of that. She bit the dust nearly, within the month. So that kind of power, prestige, renown, influence, and all of that, of course, it passes. Obviously, money, an investment portfolio, depending on your investment style, how risky, how conservative, but even the safe investments can sometimes head south. What about a celebrity? I'm no expert in celebrity culture, but I know there was a man called Christopher Reeve, and he was Superman in a few of the Superman films as well. He had an equestrian accident, and he was paralyzed from the shoulders down for the rest of his life. So he went from being Superman to a paraplegic. It happened in a heartbeat. So these kinds of endowments can, of course, come and go. So a person is renowned and all of that one day, and he is out of favor, and all of those great attributes of which he was so proud, they can leave him very quickly. What about Ruchnius? Is Ruchnius more durable in spiritual attainments, Torah knowledge? He says also not necessarily. Firstly, the Mishnah says, Al ta'amin ba'atzmecha, don't believe in yourself until the day of your death. Even someone who is great, the Yetzer Hara will still stalk him. And we have cases of that, of even people of stature, maybe not the greatest stature, but there are people who who lost their faith, not only because of Holocaust, but for other reasons as well. He says that a person can be learning, he can forget his learning because of illness, though because of dementia or reasons like that. Even rabbis can come crashing down in a blare, in a not a Blair. I use the word Blair, Tony Blair, in a blaze. I'm thinking of a blaze of ignominy. I don't want to elaborate further about that. Unfortunately, we know of cases like that as well. So a person who might be proud of either of those categories, it's always passing. But, says Tsav Sofer, and this is, I think, so brilliant, we ask, why is this mitzvah, which according to this interpretation, the Korban Ola is a warning, is a kind of ziruz, an encouragement, an urging about the perils of arrogance and self-importance and conceit. Why was this addressed to Aharon and his sons? Says Tsav Sofer, Aharon was sanctified by God himself. Hashem told Moshe, anoint your brother Aaron to be the Kohen Gadol, to be the Holy of Holies. Not only him, but his descendants after him as well. So what we mentioned before, that physical endowments or qualities, including wealth and high office and charisma and good looks and strength, can all leave a person sometimes very quickly. Even spiritual attainments, we said also. But Aharon was designated as the Kohen Gadol and his descendants after him. Actually, this is an example where they have, let's say, they are at risk for feeling self-important from birth until death, from cradle to grave, because they've been designated by Hashem. They are in that position. They're the top rung of the spiritual pyramid of the Jewish people, and that is an endowment which can, of course, create a sense of entitlement. And therefore, it says Tsav Sofer, that's why the Torah said, Tsav es Aharon v'zbanav, miyad v'ledoros, miyad for Aharon, v'ledoros, future generations as well, because even his distant descendants, ad hayom hazeh, even though the role of a Kohen today is not nearly as prestigious as it was in antiquity, but Kohen, as you know, is still called first to the Torah. The Kohen performs the mitzvah birchas Kohanim in Israel every day, in the diaspora on special occasions, but very notable occasions. Again, as is well known, from time to time he has an opportunity to do a pidyon haben. Even nowadays, someone who is a Kohen, because of some restrictions that are associated with him, his status remains, as I say, even to this day, notable, and that is something with which he is endowed from birth. It is possible for a Kohen to become prone to the sense of entitlement, the sense of achievement, the sense as if he's something special just because of the circumstances of his birth. And therefore, says Tsav Sofer, the Torah says, Tsav es Aharon, urge him miyad v'ledoros, for Aaron and for his future generations as well. Tsav Sofer then continues with another approach, which is, it's not incompatible, but it's a separate approach as well. He says, anava, humility, is a ma'ala gedola beyoser. It's a very exalted, very important, very crucial, very essential quality in the service of Hashem. Like the Gemara says, a person who is arrogant, God says to him, there's not enough space in the world for you and me. Someone who is arrogant, it's almost as if he's shunting aside the Shekhinah because he's so full of himself, he doesn't have room for God in his life. Or if he has room, God has to accommodate himself to the one who is arrogant in the mind of that person. Conversely, anivus, humility, is such an important quality, such an essential quality for Avodas Hashem. But a manhig, a leader, dare I say, a rabbi or a teacher, and all the more so a rabbi of prominence, of stature, if he's an Av Beis Din or even a Dayan on the Beis Din, the higher his position, the more important it is for him to conduct himself with a sense of importance. He has to project gravitas. Tsav Sofer quotes the pasuk Vayigba libo b'darchei Hashem, a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, and his heart uplifted him in the ways of God. there is a sense in which it is important for every person, but all the more so, of course, for a leader, let's say for a great person, to have a sense of self-importance and to project that sense of authority. Otherwise, how can he lead? How can he correct? How can he exhort? How can he educate? How can he encourage or instruct if he doesn't have that sense of presence, that sense of gravitas? How can he rebuke people if he thinks that he himself is not important? If he always says, well, who am I and what am I to tell people, to rebuke people, to correct people, to instruct people, if he thinks that way, he'll never fulfill his role and his responsibility. So therefore, a Talmid Chacham, says the Gemara, has to have an eighth of Ga'ava. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara in Sota says he has to have Shmini Shibishminis, an eighth of an eighth. That's how much he has to have. Now, difficult, of course, to measure that, but it's quite well known in rabbinic circles. A certain distinguished rabbi once said to me about another rabbi, I don't think he meant it sarcastically, but we were trying to evaluate the quality or the character of that other rabbi, and he said to me, I think he has an eighth of Ga'ava, which is he's supposed to have. It may have been a reference on the part of this distinguished rabbi that he was sort of hinting that maybe that person is a bit too full of himself, but there is a need that the Gemara definitely acknowledges. And Rashi says the reason he has to, Talmid Chacham has to have the eighth of an eighth, Shiudvarv Nishmain, so that his words will be respected. If he doesn't have that measure of self-respect, then he's not going to be able to project respect and command the respect which he must command in order to be effective. Tsav Sofer also very beautifully explains with this observation, that is to say, that a leader has to have an element of self-regard. He must conduct himself in that way, otherwise he won't be successful. With this, he explains the famous Mishnah also in Pirkei Avos. Hillel said, Im eina nili mili, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? Which he explains to mean, if I'm not for myself, meaning if I don't have a sense of self, if I don't have a sense of my own self, ability, competence, proficiency, if I don't have that, nearly, then who is ever going to listen to me? So therefore, because Hillel was the Nasi, he was the leader of the generation, so he said, I am required, it is imperative that I conduct myself with an awareness of my significance, of my competence, as I said, my proficiency. That's when I'm in public. In public, I've got to carry myself with authority. But when I'm on my own, when I'm by myself, ma'ani, then I say, I'm not anything special. I recognize that really, I acknowledge how I'm really not that important. I'm really not that great. That is the balance, says Tsav Sofer, that a Talmid Chacham needs to have. If I don't stand up for myself, who will do so? No one will, and that's my job, because I have to be conduct myself with authority and with confidence in order to project what I need to do to be a leader of the generation. Shani latzmi, but when I'm just in private between me and myself, when I'm not projecting authority, then I realize I'm nothing that special. Really, I don't have any, I won't say I don't have any great learning, but perhaps compared to what I could be or what I might be, I'm nothing special. That's what Tsav Sofer says about that. How is this approach going to explain the Kohanim? My friends, of course, the Kohanim are the leaders, what we said before, especially in antiquity. The Kohanim are the natural religious leaders. It's their role to be the leaders of the people, of the nation, of the generation by generation. So therefore, Bnei Aharon, they need ziruz regarding the form of self-regard, which is essential for them to do their job. I once heard, I didn't hear directly, I heard in the name of Rabbi Emanuel Feldman, so sein gesund. He was a rabbi in Atlanta, Georgia for many years. He's retired now, he lives in Israel, and I think he's 96 years old. He used to be the rabbi's rabbi. He used to teach in rabbinic training programs, and I once heard in his name that he said, take your job seriously, but not yourself. Don't have a sense of self-importance, but you realize your job is important. And that is what the Tsav Sofer means to say over here. The Kohanim have to take themselves seriously. I'm sorry, the Kohanim have to project that importance. They have to have that measure of self-importance. And at the same time, they have to retain their humility. So just to summarize, the first thing we've said is that the Kohanim are at risk for ga'ava in both ways, because if you think about it, other forms of ga'ava are ephemeral. A person shouldn't even be arrogant because of those things. They could leave him very quickly. But Aharon and his descendants were endowed with a measure of importance which was not going to leave them. Therefore, they have to be urged, ziruz miyad v'ledoros. The second thing we've said now from the Tsav Sofer is, in a way, the other side of the coin, that excessive humility could undermine one's effectiveness as a leader. So just like Caleb, you've got to project authority, but in your own self-regard, you have to realize how far you are from the perfection or from the aspirations to which we should all cast our sights. I just want to say that tonight's shir, retroactively, has been dedicated to the memory of Chana Dvara Bas Mordechai, that is Ruthie's late mother, whose yortzeit is tonight, and tomorrow is her yortzeit. She passed away 1 year ago, 13 months ago, really, because of the extra month of Adar, and we recall with great affection her memory, and we have become accustomed, myself included. I've been in the family for about 38, 39 years, become very accustomed to having her with us. And although she lived a very full and accomplished life, we're still coming to terms with the fact that she has transitioned into a better world. So may this shir tonight be a source of merit for her neshama. And thank you to everyone, and I wish you a wonderful Shabbos.